Hello and welcome to this session on derivatives where we will briefly learn about the types of derivatives. In this session you will learn about exchange traded derivatives, namely futures and options, and over the counter derivatives which include forwards and swaps. Based on the place they are traded, derivatives can be categorized as exchange traded or over the counter derivatives. If an exchange is involved in derivative contract, it is called as exchange traded derivatives. Exchange traded derivative contracts are standardized derivative contracts that are transacted on an organized exchange that act as an intermediary. They are standardized and require payment of an initial deposit or margin settled through a clearinghouse. If the two parties are entering into the contract without an exchange presence, it is called as over-the-counter derivatives. OTC derivatives are private, tailor-made contracts between counterparties without the presence of an exchange or intermediary. The primary difference is standardization versus customization. This leads to a crucial distinction. When dealing in exchange-traded products, terms are standardized and clearinghouse guarantees that the other side of any transaction performs to its obligation. That is, it assumes all contingent default risks, so both sides do not need to know about each other's credit quality. This differs from customized OTC products where there is no clearinghouse to guarantee performance. The need to know counterparty's credit standing is an essential distinction. The exposure difference is quite significant. In summary, what you need to take away from this session is as follows. Exchange traded derivatives are standardized and carry market risk. OTC traded derivatives are customized and carry market risk as well as counterparty risk. Let us understand the characteristics of exchange traded and over-the-counter derivatives. Exchange traded derivatives are market regulated. Regulations refers to laying down principles and rules in controlling, directing or managing an activity or a system. Here, exchange traded derivatives are controlled and managed by the exchange. They make sure that counterparties do not go default and they take guarantee of settlements. Secondly, we have settlement and clearance house. Exchange traded derivatives will have a centralized clearance house. In India, it is NSCCL, National Securities Clearing Corporation of India Limited. A clearing house is an agency for settling trading accounts, clearing trades, collecting and maintaining margin monies, regulating delivery, and reporting trading data. Clearing houses act as third parties to all future and options contracts, acting as a buyer to every clearing member seller and a seller to every clear member buyer. Next is standardization. The term standardized generally means that a security like an options contract or a futures contract has customary terms that are common among all the series and classes of contract so as to facilitate trading that derivative on an exchange. For example, there will be standardization in terms of expiry date of the contract, in terms of lots, etc. Next, you have guarantee of completion of operations. Exchange takes up the guarantee of completion of operations by standardizing the whole process and by the system of margin wherein the participants would pay an amount as deposit. This makes it sure that there is no counterparty risk. Electronized and standardized process helps in smooth completion of operations. Finally, because of the regulated nature of exchange-traded derivatives, there is a little scope for customizing agreements as per the counterparty's requirement. Next we see is over-the-counter. OTC derivatives have non-regulated market. It refers to a market which is not controlled or managed by any entity under any act. Non-regulated markets have a high degree of customization. These kinds of contracts are not overseen by any regulator. The counterparties are free to do the trade as per their requirements. There are no intermediaries in an OTC market. Hence, there are no central clearing houses. Next, we have bilateral agreements. The term bi refers to two counterparties. Bilateral agreements refers to contracts where two counterparties are entering into the trade without exchange presence. Lastly, we see non-standard tailor-made agreements. This is also called as customization. All contract terms such as delivery quality, quantity, location, date and prices are negotiable between the two parties. Here, two counterparties can add all the clauses about the expiry date, quantity, product, etc. as mutually agreed upon between them. The size of both exchange traded and OTC derivative markets have grown sharply since the 2000s. The trend was briefly interrupted by the global financial crisis, but the notional amount outstanding in both markets have since returned to almost pre-crisis level according to BIS, as you can see in the graphs on the screen. The notional value refers to the total value of the assets in a leveraged position, that is, the contract size multiplied by the current spot price per unit. As we learned, derivatives are traded either on organized exchange or in over-the-counter or OTC markets. Exchange-traded derivatives are mainly of two types: futures and options. Over-the-counter derivatives are also of two types: forward and swaps. We will study the four types of derivatives in much greater detail in the next couple of modules. For now, here is a brief introduction to each type. A forward contract is a customized contract between two parties or counterparties to buy or to sell an asset at a specified future time at a price that is agreed upon today. In a forward contract, you have a buyer and a seller with securities or commodities being traded in exchange for money. However, the point is to be noted is they do not exchange any money or product at the time of agreement. The buyer takes a long position while the seller takes a short position. The counterparties decide the terms and conditions of the contract. Forwards are an OTC derivative product. A futures contract is a standardized contract buy or sell a specified asset, either financial or non-financial, of a standardized quality at a certain date in future and at a market determined price. Futures are also known as exchange traded contracts. In fact, the only difference between futures and forwards is that futures are traded in regulated exchanges while forwards are traded in over-the-counters. Here both the parties have obligations to buy and sell as per the agreement. Depending on the type of underlying assets, there are different types of future contract available for trading. They are stock futures, index futures, commodity futures, and currency futures. Now moving on to the options. An option is a contract which provides the buyer with the right to buy or sell an asset in future at predetermined price and quantity. An option seller is party that sells the right to an option buyer. An option contract has the following characteristics. The option buyer has the right to choose whether or not to exercise the option contract. If the option buyer chooses to exercise the option contract, the option seller has an obligation to follow the contractual agreement. On the day of the contract is bought, the option buyer must pay the seller an amount of money that is called the premium. Finally, we come to swaps. The exchange of cash flows on account of an investment or payment obligation is termed a swap. A swap is a derivative in which two counterparties exchange cash flows of one party with another party. The swap agreement defines the dates when the cash flows are to be paid and the way they are accrued or calculated. The cash flows are calculated on notional principal amount in an interest rate swap, which is a type of swap you will learn about later in this program. The predetermined dollar amounts on which exchange interest payments are based. The notional principal never changes hands in transaction, which is why it is considered notional or theoretical. Neither party pays or receives the notional principal amount at any time. Only interest rate payments change hands. So there you have it. Some of the most common financial derivatives include futures, forwards, options and swaps. However, please note, since a financial derivative can be created by means of a mutual agreement, the types of derivative products are limited only by your imagination, and so there is no definitive list of derivative products. It is also not unusual for financial derivatives to be merged in various combinations to form new derivative products. With this, we reach the end of this session. We hope you have understood broad categories of derivative instruments. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.